I did that twice. No, we're not counting down. Happy Monday. Welcome to Make It Happen Mondays, where we take a little bit of time out of our busy lives so we can be informed, inspired, and make it happen for the rest of the week. If you do not know me, I am your host. I am Monique, a visionary, a growth strategist, and a faith based leadership coach. And I get to magnify the magic in the lives of Black women. The leaders that I work with, they go from feeling overwhelmed, stuck, and unfulfilled to feeling clear, confident, and fulfilled, becoming the best versions of themselves. And so, if you want to learn more about me and the programs and tools that we have developed for Black women leaders, you can go to moniqueinc.co. Again, www.moniqueinc.co. So, if this is your first time joining me on Make It Happen Monday, first, as you come in, say hello, because I want to make sure that I say hi back. This is a virtual space where we get to talk out all of our stuff with no filter. We get to share our stories. And when we share our stories, we learn that we are not alone. And this is the space that I love to have to elevate Black women, everyday Black women that's making it happen. So, most importantly, I created this space so you can feel re-energized, you can get refueled, you can get stronger, and that you can grow. And so I want you to stay connected. And you can follow me on IG at moniqueinc.co, and also by subscribing to YouTube at Monique Inc. So if you're watching me on IG, you can go to YouTube and subscribe and hit the notification button so you can know every time we go live. And engage. Again, say hello as you come in, ask questions, make comments. That's why we're live, because we want to make sure that we connect with you and to share it with some of your girls, other Black women who you think are also wanting to rise and elevate in their lives. Okay. So again, thank you for joining me. I have a special guest, and this month it's all about mental health. I have not seen I don't know that there's a conversation that I have that stress does not come up. I was recently in a meeting, and there was just a surprising statistic about the high rates of suicide. And for us as Black women and as Black people, we used to say we don't do that. Well, the numbers are very high. It's between 20 and 24. I know that it's important for us to be well. I see what it looks like when we're not. And most of us are not operating like we're operating under overcapacity. Like we're not able to show up at our best. And this is the reality for me sometimes as well too, right? So that's why it's important to keep our mental health in check. It's important for us to be well and to be whole, and healing is a part of that process. And so this week I have a special guest. Dr. Avril Sargeant is going to join us. So I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, play our Make It Happen song. You know how we do it. And we are going to welcome her to the program. So Dr. Avril Sargeant is a compassionate, patient-focused clinical counselor with over 15 years of leadership and program development experience in the nonprofit and the academic sector. Her specialty is in trauma, marriage, and family, and consulting and leading multicultural teams with diverse patients and stakeholders. So currently she's a lead counselor at Baldwin-Wallace University, and she has launched her own private practice, Restored Minds. Avril is the wife to Jermaine and mom to Tiara and Jaden, her two rock stars. In her personal time, she is an avid reader, a foodie, self-care enthusiast, and has a goal of becoming a global citizen. So let me welcome Avril with her song, her Make It Happen song. Here we go.
I know they want to know. I walk with God the Father, walk with God the Son. I walk with host of angels, all of them join. I get back in you.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Avril. Like I almost called you your first name.
That's fine. I'm April too.
So this is your Make It Happen song, huh?
This is my Make It Happen
Talk
song
to
for
us
this
about
month.
the
I have a
song.
different one every month, I feel like.
Okay, what's this one? What's this one about?
So this song is I Never Walk Alone, and I think it's a good song when those seasons when we're feeling discouraged, when we're feeling attacked, when we're feeling stressed out. We
Yeah.
have to know that we're not walking alone. God is backing us. All three, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is
Yes.
backing us. So that's my song.
Yes, I love it. And I say this all the time. I love having the guest on because you introduced me to songs that I have never ever heard of before, artists I have never heard. So now I have a new one on my playlist. Um,
Okay.
and it's funny, I was just talking to my son yesterday because I made him pull up a scripture. And our scripture was what was our scripture? Jesus. Our scripture was oh God, why am my brain freezing? But
It's
it was
Wednesday.
it was something along these lines where you're not alone. Like all things work together, Jesus. All things work
Okay.
together for the good of those that love the Lord and called according to his purpose.
Yes.
So it's around those same lines. So I'm like, when in the moment, when in life would you call on that scripture? And we
Right.
talked about when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you know things don't look like they're working out, you're reminded that you're not alone. It's all going to work out for your good. So yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. All right. Well, listen, so transparent moment.
Okay.
Dr. Avril was actually my counselor and was a pivotal part of my healing process. I have layers, and you really helped me get through the layers that I was experiencing at the time and get to another level of healing. And so I thank you. I know how instrumental you were in my life. And I just know what you're going to share with the audience today is also going to be instrumental in there. So I thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So we always start with something fun and
Okay.
quirky, right? So share something fun and quirky about yourself that people may not know.
Oh, wow. Something fun and quirky. I love all things yellow, hence I got my yellow pants on right now. Yellow is just a happy color. It just reminds me
Yeah.
again, kind of like the song when I'm discouraged. My work bag is yellow. I love all things yellow.
So you go, okay. I don't know if I ever recognized that you
Yes.
had everything yellow. I love yellow too. I love
Yeah.
yellow too. So I would love to start today by really just exploring your path into counseling because one of your focus is trauma.
Hmm.
And I'm curious as to what led you to become a clinical counselor who focuses on trauma.
Okay. So my journey to counseling, it wasn't like I was one of those people who said I want to be a counselor when I grow up.
Mhm.
Um, Undergrad, I was determined pre-law was my thing. That was my goal. That was what I wanted to go into. But the college that I went to, Morris College in South Carolina, we had to do an internship in the governmental sector. And I ended up in the Office of Continuum of Care for the Division of Social Services. So those are like your high risk cases,
Mm, mm,
where either the case is under investigation by law or media is involved. And I was really, really intrigued, but that was my junior year. So it's like, I'm not going to
mm.
go back and get a social work degree.
Right,
But I
right.
ended up working with the Department of Children and Family Services in South
Mm,
Carolina
okay.
as an investigator.
Mm.
My daughter, when she was younger, used to call me the baby snatcher, but I did not snatch babies. I
Oh,
remove kids. But I was always in my reviews
yeah,
because on the social work side is get in and get out,
yeah.
but I always wanted to, I was always that social worker was like, well, tell me more. Why is this happening?
Mm,
And I would always in my reviews, be told I was not a counselor. Like,
mm,
your job is to make sure they're following the treatment plan,
yeah,
doing everything, and let's get this case closed because there's a timeline.
right, right.
Um, So that's kind of what pivoted me over to the counseling, because I wanted to do more. I wanted to not focus on the timeline, not focus on what
Yeah,
you're doing or not doing on the treatment plan.
yeah.
Because usually, I think, even in systems, as well as us as parents, as well as us just how we judge people, we
Mhm.
focus on the behavior. But
Yeah.
it's not about the behavior, because I always counsel from a standpoint: every bad behavior, negative behavior comes from an unmet need. So let's
Mhm.
begin to figure out what the unmet need is instead of focusing on the behavior.
Oh, you jumping right in with the
You
unmet
know,
need. Okay.
so
Okay.
that was kind of like my journey. So I went back to school and got a counseling degree, and then just recently finished up my doctorate, focusing on marriage and family therapy as well. Yeah.
Hmm. So for trauma, when we say trauma, I think that has become a buzzword.
Mhm.
How do you define trauma?
So trauma, you have your big T's and your little T's, right? Because I never want to say, when somebody said that was traumatic for me, I
Mm,
never want to take away that experience, right? Because to you or I, it could be like, oh, that's not a big deal, but for them, it could have been traumatic, you
mhm,
know.
mhm,
So you have your big traumas, whether it's sexual abuse,
mhm,
witnessing the violent crime, experiencing something violent,
mhm,
veterans going to war. And
mhm,
then you have the little T's that could be multiple moves, like instability. So really, when you define trauma, it is anything that impacts the brain to
mhm,
where it's going to be a trickle effect in
mhm,
how you operate and respond.
mhm,
Is it something so impactful that I now have cognitive distortions, or stinking
mhm.
thinking is what I call it, that
Thinking,
is going to make me attach in an unhealthy way from a
yeah,
relational standpoint,
yeah.
or detach in an unhealthy way from a relational standpoint. So it's which is, again, it goes back to what I said about those behaviors, like, what is the unmet need, or what was the trauma that has not been processed.
So how would one know that it had affected them to the point where it was causing a difference in the way that they were behaving? And if I could be more specific, um, oftentimes by the time we are starting to explore and unpack our stuff,
Hmm.
we've been that way for a while,
Right, right, right.
right? And so a lot of us believe that it's who we are, like that little
Hmm.
sass, that little funk, that little, you know, that
Hmm.
guardedness that we might call something else,
Hmm.
um, it's like embedded into our being. So
Hmm.
as a woman who's out here navigating the world unaware, how do we know that the experience actually was a traumatic one, it has affected us?
Hmm. So I heard you say it's embedded in us. I'm gonna push back. I'm gonna
Right,
agree and
I love, yeah, that's it.
from
Yeah,
that. So when we think about something traumatic happening to us,
mhm,
I'll start with childhood.
yeah,
Sometimes we might suppress, or the brain allows us to suppress
yeah,
that trauma, to where we really may, you like, I'll have clients that'll come and say, I don't remember all of the details.
yeah,
Some of that is the brain letting you know you're not ready to remember all the details.
okay,
And I look at it from a maturity standpoint. Like, a 5-year old is not necessarily ready to work on all of the trauma that has happened.
yeah,
So a therapist might do play therapy with them and help them cope, right? But that 5-year old may come back at age 15, you know, and I may not do play therapy with them. I may do a little bit more digging. But that 5-year old, then 15-year old, then 25-year old, then 35-year old may keep coming back, because they're maturing. And as we mature, we can see the lens of the trauma, or not even just the trauma. It could be dysfunctional family patterns.
yeah,
It could be how our mother and grandmother taught us to cope. Is
mhm,
still unhealthy, but they might have taught us out of their own trauma.
mhm,
So we're always evolving in how we
Mhm.
process our trauma. I'm pretty sure the Monique now did not process the trauma like the Monique at 5. You know, the Avril now is not going to process like she did at 12 or 15 or whatever the case may be. So
Mhm.
we're ever evolving and we're ever discovering ourselves. Like I
Yeah.
heard a student say, oh, well, this is just me. And I'm like, well, let's not let it be you.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
can we evolve into the next you? How
Right.
can you evolve into the next Monique? And
Yeah.
so it's paying attention to those patterns and navigating those patterns differently in the seasons of your life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll hear a lot of moms say, I was fine, but then my trauma came back up when I had my kid, you
Mm.
know? And so it's coming back up, but it's
Yeah.
coming back up through, I don't want this to happen to my
Oh,
kid.
to my kid. So are there some pattern? I mean, not, I mean some signals. Are there some signals or some things that we should be paying attention to let us know that it's time to deal with it? And again, Dr. Averill, I'm coming from a place of like the women that I work with, when I even ask the question about like, how is it causing you pain? When we talk about some of the
Mhm,
things that they're dealing with, like what's causing the discomfort, it's like, if I even stop to allow myself to feel it, you know?
mhm,
So it's
mhm,
this sort of sentiment, like we're really in this survival mode of just constantly moving and going and doing
mhm.
the things that we have to do, but and are really unaware of the signals and the signs.
Right.
So what do you then let me say hi to everybody. Hi, happy Monday. Thank you for joining everybody. Say hello when you come
Hey,
in.
everybody.
But what are some of the signals? What are some of the signs that it might be time to deal with some things?
Yeah. So I heard you say busy, and I think we as Black women, that's our way of keep going. You know, I heard an elderly Black woman say, um, somebody was saying to her, she was talking to another elderly lady, and the one of the ladies was saying, you need to sit down, you're always busy, you know, you need to rest. And her response was, I'll rest when
Rest
I
when
die.
I'm dead. Yeah,
I'm like,
that's what they taught us. I'll rest when I'm dead.
that's unhealthy. Like, that's
Yeah.
unhealthy. But
Yeah.
the busyness keeps us from being still, because when we're still is when the signals come up. The
Mm,
being still is when those thoughts or those memories come up. And I
mm,
think in not even just in the Black community, I think in the Western world,
mhm.
we're taught that emotions are not good. Like you'll hear people say, oh, she's so emotional, or she's too extra, or she's doing too much, like she's always crying, or she's always angry. So we society has made it like it's a bad thing, but we are emotional beings, even from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Jesus was emotional. Like, you know, we
Jesus
can walk
wept.
through some
Jesus
scripture, you
wept.
know, where he
Okay.
was emotional, not just that he wept, he
Mhm.
was angry too. He flipped some tables over. You know what I'm saying? You know, even with Lazarus, he was angry because of their disbelief, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that is we have to learn how to sit with those thoughts and those emotions, which is uncomfortable. You know, I always give my clients the feelings wheel. And usually, when I give it to them in the beginning, it is so uncomfortable for them to identify the feeling, you know, because sometimes we'll just stay stuck in, I'm mad. She made me mad. But did she make you mad, or are you
I
frustrated?
heard
You
you.
know,
Did it
and so I think first the signal is, why am I busy all the time? Why am
happen?
I overbooking myself? You
Mm,
know, so that is a signal. And the signal is you don't want to sit and process.
mm,
And sometimes we gotta go through the pain
yeah.
to get healed. You know, I always give clients the analogy, when you break up an arm, a leg, or any bone, it's a painful process getting back to the healing. You know, like usually they'll reset the bone, that's painful. Rehab is painful, you know.
Mm,
But on the end, your arm is healed, your leg is healed.
mm,
Same thing with our mental wellness. You know, we have to stop sometimes and
yeah.
sit. And some of it is sitting with ourselves and the behaviors or the coping mechanisms that we are coping with that is unhealthy.
Hmm. And recognize them as unhealthy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned unmet needs,
Hmm.
and the unmet needs is what causes the behavior.
Hmm.
And so, what I love is this idea of inside out leadership strategy,
Hmm.
because it helps us look at how we show up in our professional spaces by way of understanding what we have dealt with personally and professionally that's leading to that moment, right?
Hmm.
And so when you find yourself in a meeting, so this was me, when I find myself in a meeting, always had something to say, had to get the last word out, some form of debate or something that happened. I just did not like feeling like I was not heard.
Hmm.
I blame the environment. So one
Right.
thing that when you worked with me, you introduced me to these core longings,
Hmm.
and in introducing me to the core longings, I then was able to identify what was leading to me feeling like I just had to be heard.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
just had to be heard, right?
Right. Right.
Fast forward, I can validate myself. But in that moment, I had
Hmm.
to be heard. So I want to share this hand of core longings and just want to invite you to talk to us. Talk to. So let me see. Let me see if I okay, there it is. We doing extra stuff today. Okay, let me see if I go. Let me pick the right one. There it is. Okay, yep. Look at this technology. Woo,
Right. Right.
woo.
Full disclaimer: I am not an art therapist, so please encourage you to judge my hand. Not an art therapist.
All right,
Um,
talk to us about this hand, the core
mhm.
longings. This
Yeah.
thing, I'm telling you, this changed my life. So go ahead.
Right. So one, let me say these are not all the core longings. These are usually the five that impact us. But Dr. Ann Haley created these core longings, and through a hand perspective. And I like how she did the hand perspective because it kind of lets you know, like if you don't have, your thumb, then you're going to be walking around like this. But core longings are something that we should originally from birth get from both our parents, mom and dad. And the core longings give us a sense of belonging. And of course, the family is where we should originally feel like we belong.
Yeah.
And those, the top five core longings, because there's more, there's like attention and other ones
Hmm.
that I can send to you. But the top ones are love, understanding, significance, trust, purpose. Safety is another one as well.
Hmm.
And so what happens is if we do not get them from our parents, we're going to cry out for them or look for them. I always use, like with love, Kenny Rogers had an old country song called Looking for Love in All the Wrong
Hmm.
Places. So
Hmm.
love is one where I will have clients look at their relational patterns, right?
Yeah.
And when we look at our relational patterns, it's like, oh, I dated this person and this happened. But then the same thing happened in a different way with the next person and the next person. Then it tells me that you've been looking for love in all the wrong places. So how do we go back and, navigate? What did you not get?
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It's not the other people. It's us.
It could be because if you're seeing the patterns, in the same relationships,
Yeah.
it's us, it's you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Not feeling understood, kind of how you use the example, like, oh, I'm gonna get the last word in this
Yeah.
meeting because
Yeah.
you're gonna understand what I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another way of coping in an unhealthy way of you're going to hear me,
Yeah.
so where was it that you did not get understanding,
Mm-hmm.
significance or important? Like I felt like I was important
Yeah. And
in
that's
this family,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
some people will make sure, women, it's like, I'm gonna make sure that my outfit is the best to where when I walk in this room,
Mm,
everybody gonna stop.
wow. That's in the yeah. Yeah.
you know and
Yeah.
so
That
that will
external
turn into,
validation.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
retail therapy,
yeah,
like, because
yeah,
I gotta have the latest things so I
yeah.
can't stop the show.
Mm,
Trust, like, you know, do I feel like I can trust you in this relationship? And so we're going to do everything, even for us as women leaders. You might see the micromanagers, and it's like, I know
mhm.
how to sign my name on the paper. Y'all have to watch me sign my name on the paper. Like, I
Right.
know how to send this email. You don't have to watch me.
Yeah.
So, is it really that I don't trust you, or is it I don't trust myself, or nobody has ever trusted me?
Mm,
People have always said I did A, B, C, or D, and it wasn't the truth.
mm.
You
So
know,
that one is interesting because it's did people trust me in addition to did I feel like I could trust the
to
people
trust other
around
people.
me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll use me as an example.
Okay.
Um, my father was the parent who was not stable.
Mm,
He was an alcoholic. It was like hit or miss. Would I get him on a good day or would I get him on a bad day? And I
right.
didn't live with him. He was not my full-time parent. But for me, trust was like, can I trust your word that you're going to do what you
Yes.
say?
Yes.
And if you didn't do what you'd say, it would just enrage me.
Yes. Yes.
And in my own healing, it was like, it was the times that my dad didn't show up when he said he
Mm,
would show up, or
mm,
it was the times that my mom was prepared to drop me off and he was sloppy drunk. And it was like, you done promised me all these things, and
yeah.
now I got to go back home. And as much as my mom would like try to make that day a better day for me, it
It's
wasn't from him.
right. Right.
And so sometimes, in my relationships, even with my husband, it's like it could be the smallest thing. Like, you said you was gonna do it. Why you didn't do it? And he was like, I forgot. And it's like, well, why did you? And it was like, so I had to learn, like, oh, that's some daddy stuff coming up.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
talk so in your healing process for just that specific one for trust, now that you have that understanding, like what do you do differently? Because it sounds like the feeling still comes up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is
Because emotions are real. They're there.
yeah,
You know.
and it's playing off of
Right.
a memory that just
Mm-hmm.
exists. Our
Yeah. Yeah.
bodies store it up. Even, I say all the time, like I have a reaction before I can even process it because my
Mm-hmm.
body is responding to this familiar ick.
Right. Right.
So now what do you do that you didn't do then when that comes up?
So I think it's being aware of when the emotion comes up.
Mhm.
And so, because it's nothing wrong with the emotion coming up, but it's taking some time for you to process the emotion internally, not against them. Like I always tell little kids, anger is not a bad emotion. Now if I go hit you and knock you upside the head, that's the bad part.
Right.
Not because I'm angry. My anger is justified.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do I take time and be aware of regulating myself? So
Okay.
first, I think is, as for me, I had to know, like, my trustworthiness is about my dad. Everybody is not like my dad. Like, my uncle, who I called daddy, was trustworthy. He always made a way. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And so he was the father figure for me. And so I have to remember, just because Charles didn't do it, Norman showed me the positive way of doing it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other people. And so just because my husband did not put my bathroom cabinet together today, life is not over.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
will get to the cabinet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I can step back and regulate.
Yeah. I love what you're saying about the self-regulation in the terms of there's some things that we may not have received.
Hmm.
We can focus on those, or we can
Hmm.
think about the ways in which we did get those
Right.
things,
Yeah.
right? And
And it,
yeah.
I think it's also, not to cut you off, being aware of our stinking thinking as well,
Yeah.
because what we will do out of our trauma, and some of it is protection. It's like, I can't trust any man. So we know that's a negative thought. What? So I have to challenge that thought, like, well, my dad's deceased now, but it's like, I can't trust Charles but there are other men that I can trust.
Yeah.
So we have to redirect those negative thoughts,
Yeah.
because if we don't,
And
because when we think about it from a cognitive behavioral model, our thoughts dictate our emotions and our emotions dictate our behavior,
mm,
so then we're in this unhealthy
fun.
triangle
Yeah.
if we're operating out of,
Yeah. Yeah.
negative thoughts.
So it's always starts with the thought. And
Yes.
so we may believe that it's the emotion, but
Hmm.
we're not even conscious of the thought. So
Yes.
whenever you're feeling the emotion, what I'm hearing you saying is, okay, now play that back. What
Yes.
what
Yes.
popped up in
Yes.
your mind
Hmm.
that then led to that emotion?
Yes. Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's
Because
good.
it's even like, why am I behaving this way? Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you a recent example for me, because I'm an emotional eater, guilty.
Okay.
And so the other day, it was, any college is just stressful for college counselors the first 4 weeks. Because we're dealing with the freshmen adjusting,
Yeah.
and we're dealing with the seniors, like, woo, life about to get real. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's just hitting. And we're dealing with parents who are like, what's this? What's this? How about my kids' mental health? And so I noticed that my coworker and I
Hmm.
went and ate, but
Hmm.
then, like, we sat down, had dinner, but I'm going to Chick-fil-A after, on my way home, and I'm like, ooh, what is this?
Yeah.
So I noticed the behavior first, but it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so let me, like, I'm stressed because everything is coming at me. What is
Yeah.
the thought? So,
Hmm.
and this is the other thing, I'll use this example. So my thought is, food is comfort. I come from a family who loves to
Mm.
cook. Like, if you're sad, we gonna eat. If you're happy,
Eat.
we gonna eat.
You
If
go
you're
eat.
mad, we gonna eat.
Eat. Eat.
But that can be unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
Physically. So it's
Yeah.
okay. I'm needing some comfort, or I'm needing a way to de-stress.
Right.
You can go
Yeah.
for a walk, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
get out the Chick-fil-A line. Now, I must admit, I did not get out the Chick-fil-A line.
I was about
But
to say, you know, you like, I'll do better tomorrow.
right, right, right. I'm gonna walk tomorrow, right? And so that's just a way of how it works. So, like, even if you
Yeah.
see the behavior or you feel the stress, how do you
Yeah.
kind of work yourself back to, like, what am I thinking? How am I
Yeah.
viewing this situation? And
Yep.
that
What am
way, if it is a trauma response, then you can know, like, we're not going to do that. Like I say to my interns, especially the new ones, because they're new, the anxiety is high. Like, I don't know if I can do this. So I'll be like, oh, don't stick up my office with those thoughts. We're not doing stick and
yeah.
picking in
Yeah.
here, you know.
So much is on our thoughts, like even in business, like what your success in business and putting a product out, or it's like it starts with your thoughts. And
Hmm.
so often we focus on the skill set in our society, the skills, the external thing that you see, but there's
Hmm.
so much before you even get there, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's why we can focus on that skill and see something shift very temporarily, because
Hmm.
until get to the depth of that thought and where that is coming from and what you
Right.
believe, it's like you're stuck in that pattern, in that cycle. You keep repeating it without even being aware of why you're repeating it. So it's
Yeah.
like this radical honesty that's required, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
So
I
go
was
ahead, go ahead.
listening to a sermon a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about honest prayers. Like, we
Mhm.
can't go to God like with the King James version, like,
Yeah,
Lord,
yeah.
hallowed be thy name, and I'm here to thank you. He was like, be honest, because
That's it.
God already knows what you're thinking.
Yeah,
That's what I say in therapy. I can only work with what you give me. So if you come in here and be like, I'm good, okay, then how do we keep you being good? Like, and after a
yeah,
while, I'm going to say, why are you here? But I think we have to be honest with ourselves as well,
yeah,
and we have to be honest that my thoughts are impacting me, so what do I need to do to shift the thoughts? Or I'm
yeah,
struggling with regulating my emotions, because if you're not honest,
yeah,
then
yeah.
what you going to work with?
And what I recently realized, and I become a advocate for, so I'll say this on any live that I get on, is hypnotherapy. Because I had gotten to the point, and even with my counseling with you, that I did as much as I could consciously be aware of.
Right, right.
There was still just something there that I couldn't quite put my finger on that was leading to the same patterns. But
Hmm.
it took me to have the hypnotherapy to really get into those subconscious thoughts
Right.
and that programming that I didn't even realize was a part of, like, that was what was happening. I
Hmm.
wasn't even aware of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's just like another level. But I have complex trauma. So
Right.
that's just, everybody doesn't have to
Yeah,
go to that depth, but
yeah.
mine was so deeply rooted that I didn't even know that they
Right.
existed. And I
Yeah,
had learned such a coping mechanism that it didn't allow me to really go there. So I
right.
said the interesting thing about hypnotherapy is that I'm aware of what's happening, but I don't have control to stop it.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when the tears are coming, I can feel the tears. I just can't wipe them. And like,
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
when I had to hit the thing,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, I'm like, you couldn't have paid me to think that I would be in here beating. Like, if I just came into your office, I would not go to the wall and just start hitting
Right,
that.
right, right.
Absolutely not. I'm too controlled for that.
Hmm.
I don't operate, especially even when you're in your healing process and looking to be healthy, like you don't do certain things just because you feel like I'm healthy, I'm getting healthy.
Right,
I don't
right. Yeah,
act out of, I don't get out of order. I
yeah,
don't allow myself to get worked up in that way,
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah,
that's all under the auspice of it being the healing, but being
yeah,
able to release what's been held in your body for so
yeah,
long,
yeah.
but
It's
yeah.
it's interesting that you say that. Shared this, I think I shared this story in a workshop a couple of months ago. So my mom died unexpectedly when I was 12. But
Mm,
I remember the day of her funeral, some of my aunts were like, so my mom's main name was Robinson. And
mm,
my aunt was making the comment, like, we're Robinsons, no need to cry, we got you. And
mm,
so I remember like, oh, I can't cry because
yeah,
I'm a part of the Robinsons. And
yeah,
I remember at her funeral, like attempting to well up, but I was like, oh, I can't, like, I'm a Robinson,
yeah,
like,
right,
and
yeah.
I did not like cry.
Mm,
And so I remember one of her good friends coming to me after the funeral and was like, if you need to cry, cry. And
mm,
I'm so thankful for that moment because it was like, not that my family was trying to do anything wrong.
yeah,
That was their way of saying, we got you. You know what I'm saying? And
yes,
so, but what I heard as a 12-year-old, don't cry. But in that, there's a part of me that still will not cry in front of people, to the
mm,
point to where
mm,
I was crying one day, and my daughter had to be like middle school, high school. And she was so like disturbed that she called one of my good friends and was like, my mom's crying and I don't know what to do. Right. And so that was a pivotal moment for me because it was like,
okay.
this kid ain't never seen me cry. So what
Mm,
am I teaching her about crying? And
yeah,
it was such a, and it wasn't about her calling my friend, but like the response was like, like, my
yeah,
mom's in
like,
the other room
yeah,
crying, and I
right,
I ain't never seen this, so something is like,
right.
whoa. And so for me, it was like, I can't model this for my kid, like, because one,
Mm,
I've already modeled it thus far. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
probably, in moments that she did want to cry, was like, you don't need to cry, I got your back. You know what I'm saying?
right,
And even
right,
though I got
right.
her back, she needs to cry,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
I find myself in different moments doing that, or avoiding, like,
yeah.
ooh, I'm not gonna cry, and some of that is fear of, if I cry,
Mm,
I'm not gonna stop, like, I
yeah,
remember,
yeah.
this was just maybe 2 years ago, when my uncle, who I called dad, died. I remember working, like, still seeing clients the day of
Mhm.
his service, right? And
Yeah.
it took,
Uh,
um and it was like, so I remember my business partner was like,
Yeah.
ain't your dad's funeral today? Because she was looking at the calendar. And I was like, yeah, it's not till this time. She was like, did you see
Wow.
her at 8 o'clock? And I was
Wow.
like, I did. And she was like, you're avoiding. And she was like,
Mm,
you need to cry right now. And I was like, no, what else going on at the office? She was like,
mm,
I'm not
mm.
talking to you about the office. I'm talking because your dad is dead. And I was like, don't say that, and she was like,
Yeah.
he's dead, Avril. And the funeral
Mm,
is today. And it was
wow.
like, and I just remember, even in that moment, I didn't want my husband in the room. I didn't want my family in the room. And I was like
Yeah.
the last one getting dressed,
Mm,
and it was
mm,
like, woo, 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 to where they're like, the car is here. And I'm like, okay, okay.
mm.
But I literally saw clients like an
Yeah.
hour before, maybe 2 hours before.
And
But that's unhealthy. Let me say to everybody on Instagram
and,
Live.
no, and I'm and
Right.
saying, and I thank you for sharing, because one, you're a therapist a counselor who does this work, who
Hmm.
understands this work, but you're also sharing your own challenge with
Right.
your healing process.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so I have my own take on it, but do you believe that we do fully get healed?
I do. I do. I think but in getting fully healed, we have to do a lot of work.
Mm,
I see a therapist because I come from a stance. I believe a good therapist should see a therapist.
yeah, yeah,
I tell my interns a good therapist should see a therapist because I don't want to bleed my stuff on you.
right.
I don't want to, even after that, after my dad died, I didn't do any grief work for a moment because
Right,
it's like, I don't need to come up in here and you tell me
right.
your dad died. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
goodness.
because then
Yeah,
it ain't
yeah,
going to be
yeah,
therapeutic for you.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So even as a therapist, I believe good therapists need to know what season they're operating in and operating out of. And I never want to harm or project or put my stuff on you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't like I had an intern who was saying like I was giving her a couple and she was like, I don't think I'm ready for the couple
Mm,
because I just went through a divorce. That's a good therapist. You know
right,
what I'm saying?
right,
Because she
right,
was
right.
honest with herself to know, mm-mm, I don't want to bring you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so I think
yeah.
in that, I do believe healing can happen, but you have to do the hard work and we
Mm,
have to want to do the hard work. And I think where people stay stuck
mm.
is we don't want to deal with the pain and we have to sit with the pain.
I'm under so I call it active healing.
Hmm.
I'm under the mindset that it's so layered,
Hmm.
and there's so many. It's like I could think that I'm healed outside of a relationship, and then when I get in a relationship, I'll be like, whoop, And so, and then I could think, okay, we got to this point,
Hmm.
but now this thing happened. The same thing on the job,
Hmm.
right? It's like,
Right,
oh,
right,
I'll
yeah.
do this, and so I like to call it healing,
Hmm.
because there's so many things that come up along the way
Yes.
that teach us that there's another level.
Yes.
And so I start to think, like, how do we make, I call it active healing, sexy?
Hmm.
Where it's not like this, I'm sitting in the corner, sucking my thumb, can't live in life.
Hmm.
But it's like this process of discovery.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right. It's a journey. And
yeah,
it is like I said in the beginning, like you're ever evolving. But
mhm,
my daughter and I are in personal training. Shout out to Melissa at 101 Fitness. But when you think about personal training for your physical health,
yeah,
you plateau. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
You fall off the wagon. Like I'm off the wagon now.
yeah. She was
And
at Chick-fil-A.
right, I was at Chick-fil-A and the Mexican side. You know, and so, but your trainer is still encouraging you, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about working out, it hurts. You know what I'm saying? It's uncomfortable. But when you get the 5 pounds mastered, what they do, they put on more weights, right? And then it's like, you crazy, and so um but if you're committed to losing that weight or getting into that dress, you go through the plateau, you follow the meal plan, you go, you do the weights, the cardio, or whatever. Same thing with our mental wellness. You're going to do it. Same thing with our career goals. um, Anybody who's been through the dissertation process, that's getting hazed all over again. You know what I'm saying? And my dissertation chair
Yeah.
was like an army ranger, like, and
Wow.
it's like, oh, so it's hard, but I knew the end goal, right? I
Yeah.
knew that I wanted my degree. So
Yeah.
same thing, we have to want our mental wellness just like we want to get into that dress, just like we want that career or that degree. We have to do the work. And like you said,
But
we
why?
have to be
Yeah.
actively
Yeah. Actively doing it. But why?
healing.
But what's on the other side? So describe this live is called for the road to healed and whole. What does that look like? Like even when you work with your clients, where are you working to get them to where you can say they have arrived?
I don't want to say that they've have arrived, but it's like, oh, they can do this journey. Like, you know what I'm saying? They can ride down on this bicycle on this journey comfortable. The bike ain't wobbling no more.
Okay. Okay.
And so for me, it's like you're aware of your cognitive distortions or stinking thinking. You
Mm-hmm.
begin to learn how to regulate your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you see your behavioral change, right? And I see, like, when a client has began to consistently do that,
Mm-hmm.
or that, I love when clients say, I heard you in my head, and you were like, so what you gonna do with that thought, and I navigated the thought. When I begin to see them navigate and regulate the emotions, and
Okay.
their behavior begins to change and their spirit begins to change and their confidence in their healing journey begins to change, it's like, I think you're good.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a check in every 6 months if you need to, but you're good.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think it's not about arriving,
All
but
right.
it's like,
Yeah.
how am I maintaining my
Yeah.
wellness,
Wellness. Yeah.
and how am I coping?
Okay.
Like for me, I know I have learned in my self care journey, I have my daily go tos, which are like the quick grabs, like grabbing a quick snack.
Mhm.
So it could be my playlist, driving to work. It
Yeah.
could be listening to a podcast. It could be my little scriptures,
Yeah.
on my desk. It could be my favorite foods.
Yeah.
But those are my like daily go-tos.
Yeah.
But then I have my weekly decompress time, so
Okay.
is it I'm gonna go sit and get my nails done? Is it I'm just gonna sit on this couch and watch Netflix? Is it I'm gonna sleep in? So when you begin to find a rhythm as you build out your daily go-tos, your weekly, your bi-weekly, your monthly,
Mm-hmm.
your quarterly, just like you would do in a business plan, you got what you got to do for the week, the quarter, and all of that. It helps you to find your rhythm and it helps you to know when you're off rhythm.
Yeah. 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 When you
So,
talk to it,
so
yeah.
for me, I know like every 3 months, I need a
Mhm.
long weekend. I
Yeah.
might need a week, and I might just mysteriously disappear.
Yes. Because you sat with yourself and you know
Right,
how
right.
to check in what you need. And
Yeah.
that is kind of you now you have a rhythm, which is
Yes.
what I like to call it, not balance, but a
Mhm.
harmony or rhythm in your
Yeah,
life where
yeah,
there's a flow.
yeah.
You know, the
And
busy season and you know how you're going to decompress from that, right?
right, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same thing with the rhythm in the healing. I know that like that doesn't bother me as much as it used to. And
Mm,
it's like, okay, go ahead then.
mm,
You kind of, move differently,
yeah.
and it's not that you're acting funny. It's just like your window of tolerance has gotten higher or lower.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. I could definitely relate. So as you have shared with us So many things. I'm gonna attempt to recap. Um, the first thing you asked was a very, very good question that we should all sit with. Why am I so busy
Hmm.
and overbooking myself? Why am I so? And before you say, it's not me, such and such this and this, that, because that's the first thing on my mind. Well, that's the first, when I answer, I'm like, well, Caleb has this and such this. And then I'm like, but you added this, and then you doing that, and you doing that, right? So
Hmm.
before you blame it on the external things,
Right.
ask yourself why you're doing it. Because if there's some external things that you really have no control over, they're part of your responsibility,
Hmm.
then you have to ask why you're adding these other things, right?
Right.
In
Right.
which
Right.
knowing that you have those responsibilities, and what are you telling yourself, which is something else that you talked about. All of our actions, our reactions, our emotions start with a thought.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it may be that you're busy and overbooked because you feel like, as an entrepreneur, I gotta make this money. I gotta
Right.
do X, Y, and Z to make this money. But what's the truth? There's a million and one ways
Right.
to make
Right.
money. Do you
Hmm.
have to make it like that? You see? So that's
Hmm.
what some of those truth tellers. But why am I busy and overbooked? You talked about this idea of self-regulation, being able
Hmm.
to really, when it comes up, when the triggers come up, that you can really understand where they're coming from, why
Hmm.
they are, and choose to respond differently, right?
Hmm.
So to be less reactionary, more reflective, and then regulate yourself.
Hmm.
You talked about, which I just said, it starts with a thought, but it was so good. I'm gonna say it again. We have a reaction and we think that it's the reaction, but really it's a thought that came before it. So they call
Hmm.
that what? Reverse engineering. So once you feel
Hmm.
it, think about, what did I just think? Or what am I
Right. Right.
thinking that's leading to that? And you said it good too, because sometimes it is what was taught to us, right?
Hmm.
What we've come to, what we've come to know as our truth, what was taught to us, and that leads for us to react in that way. You
Right.
taught us about the core longings, and I just want to sit with this a little bit, and I want to just share this one more time, because can we normalize the natural needs that we have
Hmm.
without
Hmm.
feeling like we are something is wrong?
Right. Right.
Because we
Yeah.
have a desire for this sense of belonging that
Right.
shows up in us feeling loved, understood, significant, that we have trust and are trusted, and that we have the purpose, or there's purpose in the thing that we're doing,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like that is natural.
Right.
And what you have said is that a lot of our actions come as a result of the unmet need that we have in these core longings.
Right. Right. Yeah. And how do
Yeah.
we recognize that we didn't get them? I think with us, especially in communities of color, we have been taught a reference of our parents and our elders, as we should respect them. But I think from like when, just like when I do trauma work and somebody begins to cry, I don't give them a Kleenex because I want them to cry, but I think one of the things that we do in our community is we'll start with a story like my mom or dad did this, but then we'll put a but they did the best they could. But when we
Mm,
do but they did the best they could, we're stopping our
that's
brain
good.
from processing what they did do that might have not been best for us.
Yeah.
And
And
it's not that we disrespect them, but
yeah.
it's stopping us from processing,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
not that we can't change what they did or didn't do, but
Yeah.
excusing it away stops
Yes.
us from healing and processing, you
Yes.
know.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. It's because we're not, and there's a way to do it without judging them.
Hmm. Hmm.
The
Yeah.
truth of the experience is the truth of the experience. And it doesn't
Yes.
mean that I judge you for it, but
Right.
it
Right.
does mean that I'm able to see how it affected me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And if
because
that's
now
parental, yeah, go ahead.
because now for me, I'll use the example with my dad with trust. The unhealed Avril would have said he was a drunk, he was no good, he didn't help. But the healed Avril now can describe him as Charles didn't have the capacity to be a father.
Right. Right.
I wouldn't have been
And
able to say that
yeah.
unhealed Avril.
Yeah. But and it's the truth, right?
Hmm.
And it doesn't demean him. It was the truth of the way that he
Right,
showed up in your life.
right,
And I
right.
think that's true for our parental relationships. I think it's true for our friendships. I think it's true
Hmm.
for our work environments that we get to say what it is without dismissing or blaming ourselves, like
Right,
rationalizing it. I would say
right.
rationalizing it, right?
Hmm.
Like
Right,
this is what it is, and it wasn't okay for my sense of
right, right.
belonging, for my
Yes.
core longings. It
Hmm.
did not
Yes.
meet that need.
Right.
And it's a really hard pill to swallow. I had to, I think as parents is where we really kind of get confronted with that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because you know, you may know, and your daughter is on here really rooting for her mama. So I love it.
Or
I love
critiquing her mom.
it. But you know, when my child said, I'm thinking I'm giving such stability,
Hmm.
and he's like, going between two houses is not stable.
Hmm.
In my mind, it's stable because your lights wasn't cut off like mine, your gas
Hmm.
wasn't cut off, your phone, you had this secure. I loved you. There was no abuse in the home. I've done great. I
Right.
have avoided you experiencing anything traumatic that I did.
Hmm.
But yet you going in between two houses was traumatic for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And to sit with that as a
Hmm.
parent. So learning to not only not project it on, like when you're understanding your core longings and not judging for whoever did not give them, but
Hmm.
also not judging yourself when you realize that you didn't provide that for someone else.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
a whole nother level where
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
say, dang, I
Yeah.
get that, but
Hmm.
I still did great.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, for
And
what I
that's
did,
where we,
you know.
yeah, and that's you also being aware of generational patterns, because when we're aware of those patterns, um, we can then, when we're aware, we should stop them. Like I used to go off on my kids because my mom went off on me. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
But that's not
And
okay.
so
Right.
it's not okay. It's not
And I
okay.
work, oh, then that's a whole nother thing. Cause I'm saying that anger, I work really hard. I always tell them like, you get away with it because of who I am deciding to be, because of my
Right.
history, and I don't want to be violent, you know.
Yes.
My
Yes.
God, you deserve for me to whoop your butt right now. It's a whole thing. So this
Yeah.
healing it's just a whole thing. It's a whole process. But you know, you gave us a really clear. Your daughter says she's rooting for you. You gave us a very,
Thank
very
you.
clear, um, a clear idea of what it looks like to really take
Mhm.
care of yourself during your healing process, and to know that it is a process, that it is a journey, it is a road, right? It's a
Mhm.
road trip. It's not just going up the street, it's a road trip. But
Mhm.
but not so much to focus on arriving,
Mhm.
but celebrate, just like most things in life. Like even God, He's concerned with our journey, but
Right.
He's
Right.
concerned about what we get, what we learn, how we grow in the process. And it's the same thing for our healing, that we
Right.
get to see these new abilities that we have to show up in the world differently, right? To take care of ourselves and the people around us differently. And so you name the daily go-tos that you have, the weekly
Mhm.
ones, you know, whenever you know that it's time to love and care on yourself, so you
Mhm.
could continue to show up in the world as a better version of yourself. Like
Right.
that is what it's all about. Being
Right.
cognizant and being courageous enough to make the decisions that are best for your well-being,
Right.
and knowing that that trumps
Mhm.
anything else that we might be trying to do in this life with
Right.
anybody, for anybody, or to achieve or obtain anything.
Right.
That trumps. And when we put that first, that's when we'll start to live a really healed and whole
Mhm.
life,
Yeah.
right? So, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it.
I'm
This
a
was
good,
fun. My
I'm a good
first
student.
podcast.
I'm a good student. Yeah, but I've learned so much from what you've taught, and thank you for sharing that what you have today. And I hope anybody who's listening, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them as we wrap. But is there anything that you want to share that you want people to walk away with if they don't get anything else? Something that you want them to know.
I think healing takes time, and healing is a journey. I don't
Yeah,
want people to put a timeline on it. Like, I've been in it for a year, and it's a journey.
yeah, it's a journey. So pack your best bags.
Hmm.
Put your snacks,
Yeah.
get your snacks in your water, because we in for a process. But
Hmm.
it is a challenging experience, but it is the most beautiful to come on the other side and meet the real you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to just to operate as her, to be
Yeah.
able to shed the layers. I think about Erica Badu's song "Bag Lady," to be able to put some of them bags
Yes.
down. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
um, it's challenging, but it's also hard to be broken,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
painful to be broken as well.
Yeah.
So at
Yeah.
least when you go through the healing process, you know that there's something on the other side that feels
Yes.
a
Yes.
lot different than sitting in the pain and the brokenness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this quote that was on Instagram for a while, but I just want to lift it back up because I think that it's good. It kind of gives us a different perspective of healing and of trauma. So it says you're not healing to be able to handle trauma. You're used to trauma. You're healing to be able to handle the joy. So, as we close for this week, I just want to remind you that you're healing to be able to handle the joy. Okay. So, you all have a great rest of your week. I'm going to do some self care for myself today and go watch some Netflix because it's just what I need. Dr.
Yay.
Avril, right? Yay, the self care. Dr. Avril, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your incredible story and all of the insight that you have. I'll see you guys next week. We're continuing to lift up our mental health and well-being. We have to be well. So let's get this information that we can and become a better version of ourselves. Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Thank
Have a great
you.
rest of your week.
All right.